Well, dry conditions are still holding strong across much of the Cornhusker state. There is still time for some good spring moisture, but many areas will need above average rainfall to get back to normal levels before grass turnout. With that in mind, Nebraska Extension educator Berger says now is the time to lock in feed supplies for your cattle.
When we look at the foundation for cow-calf production, stock yearling production in Nebraska, it's based on forage from range and pasture. And when we look at the impact of the dry conditions from last summer going into the fall and winter, we're going into the spring with range and pasture that's already been stressed. And so we need significant precip here in the next 2 months for grass to get up and get going. Even with average precip, I think we need to plan for reduced stocking rates on many of these pastures because of the stress those plants were under last year. Plan on delayed turnout. So that's just kind of the status of where we're at. And most places across the state, we have soil moisture that's much below average. And so we have to replenish that before we're ever even going to get back to average. So it's kind of a somber outlook, honestly, right now. And then when you look at the forecast, it's above average temperatures, below average moisture, and that's not a good recipe for getting a good start to our growth for the grazing season. Right now, it's a good time to take stock of the forage resources you have on hand, hay, silage, whatever you got in terms of feed. What do we need to do to delay turnout, even if we have some average moisture? And then I also think beginning to put together a plan if we don't get significant moisture. How are you going to destock your grazing resources? Are you going to dry lock cows, move them to some other place where there's pasture available? Are you going to need to sell cattle? Really, it's just putting together that drought plan and some trigger dates and identifying how are we going to set some time or places in time where we're going to make decisions. Doing that proactively now just allows you to really assess all your options and make the best of this situation. There's still a lot of feed supplies readily available, a lot of carryover hay, in part because we had an open winter. Folks grazed out longer, used crop residue extensively. So there's hay available. Also, when you look at things like ethanol co-products, distillers grains, even corn, it's readily available. And those are at prices that are below the 4-year average. And so, many cow-calf producers have sold calves, might have some money in their pocket. They're going to want to hold that cow herd together, hoping that we do get some moisture, wanting to capitalize on these good calf and feeder cattle prices. And so in my mind, securing some feed supplies now, something like distillers grains that's high in energy, high in protein, a good complement for low quality forage, just allows you to then have some options as you think about what you might do with that cow herd, early weaning calves, just giving yourself some opportunity to do something. That Northwest Panhandle, they're just in pretty tough shape. They've been in tough shape for quite a while. They've gotten a little bit of snow here recently, but I visited with some producers from that part of the world that are saying they're not planning on turning cows out, and unless we just have a really unbelievably wet spring. So they're already in that mindset of, hey, we need to reduce stocking rate. There's other parts of the state that are really dry as well, but I think as you look at the drought monitor, that Northwest Panhandle seems to be the area that's kind of the bullseye right now. Visit with your local NRCS office, FSA, in terms of sometimes there's some opportunity to get some compensation for not grazing a pasture for the summer after a fire like that. Again, I think those folks have been through this kind of thing before. It's really securing feed resources, whether that's pasture somewhere else or dry lotting cows is really what their options is right now, because obviously those pastures that have been burned, delaying grazing on those is sure going to need to happen during the growing season this summer. Maybe some dormant season grazing this fall and winter if we get good precip, but for the next 6 months, that's not going to be a grazing resource available to them.